Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the discussion, right? Now, I'm going to talk about veganism and the different issues that we have, right? Vegans and non-vegans alike. Now, it is a very popular belief amongst non-vegans that vegans are aggressive, militant, fascists, right? And you look at the debates and the arguments between the two, right? Vegans and non-vegans, and it usually goes along the lines of a person who's non-vegan will say, oh, we have canine teeth, and then the person who is vegan is like, yeah, we have canine teeth to bite into hard fruit. And then the person who's a non-vegan, they're like, we're carnivores. And then the person who's vegan is like, carnivores don't get heart disease. And they go back and forth, right? And then what happens is you get to the argument where once the person who's non-vegan doesn't have any more excuses left, right, to defend meat eating, they just go, well, I'm gonna do whatever I want to do and eat whatever I want to eat, and you should just let me live the way I want to live, and you leave me alone, I leave you alone. I don't know why you can't just respect my way of life, right? And then the vegans are like, you're a murderer! How could you call yourself human? Right? And they're holding the picket signs up in the comments section, right? Getting their activists on. And it's just this here, the clashing, right? And, all right, so let's talk about where does this militance comes from? Where does this aggression comes from on the vegan side, right? Are vegans really like this fringe group of crazy people, or really are we all the same way, right? Because now understand, it's not just people who are vegan who protest stuff. It's not just vegans who feel very strongly about stuff, right? Everybody does this, right? But where does it come from? Now, let's take a look at the vegan mentality. Right? Most of us weren't raised vegan. We saw some stuff that really opened our eyes, right? We maybe watched some documentary like Earthlings or Food Inc. or whatever the case is, What the Health, right? We saw animal slaughter videos. We saw, what happens to animals in the fur industry and all of this type of stuff. And this stuff is so gruesome. It's so horrific, right? The sound of the pigs being slaughtered, and the cows, you see the fear in their eyes. You even see tears in their eyes, right? And this stuff, anybody who's capable of compassion and empathy, it touches you right here, right? It does something to you. Witnessing this level of violence happening to innocent beings, right? It's mortifying, the blood and the sound and oh man, you're just like, oh, it breaks your heart. And this type of violence, to witness this, it brings real trauma to a person who witnesses this, right? It's traumatic to witness this level of violence. And so when you're a person and you see this and you go vegan because of it, and you're like, oh, this is terrible, we gotta stop this, this is great, this is madness, right? And so you go vegan, and then you talk to a person who's not vegan, and then you try to explain it to them, like, look what's happening to these animals. And the person who isn't vegan is like, they give you something like, oh, well, the circle of life, right? And you're like, you see this mass animal holocaust is not the circle of life. This doesn't happen in nature. This is horrific. And so what happens is you look at people who are, I don't know, I call them regular people, but some people call them carnists, meat eaters, whatever the case is, right? And so the person who's vegan sees the person advocating for this cruelty, right, or defending this cruelty. The vegans get pissed off because your trauma in your mind gets associated with those people, those non-vegans, those slaughter and death advocates, right? That's how they're viewed. That's how vegans view that, right? You're advocating for this level of cruelty. So the trauma comes up, and that's where all the militance and aggression comes from. The name calling and the calling you wicked, evil people, calling you bad people because you won't go vegan and all of this type of stuff, right? Now look, it doesn't, whether you're vegan or not, you'll go through this, right? It's human nature. I give you another example, right? let's say you're not vegan, but you may be passionate about another issue. Like, let's say you just witnessed another suicide bombing that kills a bunch of women and children, right? Like, just like what happened in that concert in Manchester, right? I don't know if it was a suicide bomber or whatever the case. Somebody would have bombed, right? And it blew up some kids and whatnot in a concert, some wicked stuff, right? And you see these people who are like, you know, they're killing people in the name of like Islam, you know, the Muslim religion, whatever. And so now you turn on the news and all of this type of stuff, which is something that I really try to avoid, right? Because you turn on the news and then it's like everybody else versus these wicked Muslim people. With these Muslim people, Islam is a religion of hate and violence, and we got to keep them out. They're wicked, barbaric people, right? Because they just want to strap on bomb vests and kill a bunch of innocent people, right? And so you develop this trauma. You see little kids dying. You see, you know, these mass shootings. You see this cruelty, this violence. Even as a person who's non-vegan, you see this, and you have a passion for human life. Maybe you don't care about animal life, but you care about human life. And when you see this type of violence and cruelty going on towards human life, whoever's doing that violence, who's ever committing those acts of cruelty, you attach that violence to them, and you have those militant, aggressive feelings towards them. So the same way a vegan would view a person who's non-vegan or advocates for meat eating is the same way a person would look at Islam or Muslim people, right? You people is responsible, right, for the trauma. The trauma affects this. The trauma of witnessing this level of violence and aggression. It triggers, right, the human psyche to respond this way with this aggression in turn. Let's say you don't see nothing wrong with Muslims. You say, okay, cool, but not all Muslims are like that and all that type of stuff, right? It's the same way where not all vegans are really militant and aggressive, like myself. Not all vegans are militant and aggressive, right? Not all meat eaters are animal haters or whatever the case is. Not all meat eaters even advocate for meat eating, right? We can't just all make this blanket kind of thing. It's easy to make a blanket statement about a group of people. It's easy. It's not a good idea, but it's easy, right? So let's look at African Americans, how they feel about police. You can make a blanket statement about police. They just want to kill us, right? You can say that. And then you have black people versus the police. And then you have people who are not black people, who are like, let's say, white people, racist or not, and they defend the police no matter what the police do, right? Like that whole, like, I don't know, like say for instance, the thing with the, what's the guy? Philando Castile, right? Guy was gunned down in front of his kid and his girl, right? Just innocent man, right? And so people are fuming, all these police, they're out of control, they're above the law, they can kill people with impunity, they're a bunch of murderers, right? And then the people who defend the police, now the people who are against the police, and now they're against the police and the people who defend the police, and it's this again. It's the same thing over and over and over again. It's not just a problem that vegans have or anybody else. It's a problem we all have. It's ego versus ego, right? It's emotions versus emotions, right? And when we have these conversations, the same way I'm talking to you and I'm trying to communicate with you and trying to bridge the gap, right? Because vegans and non-vegans are not really that different. People who are brown and people who are fair skinned are not really that different. We're all human beings. We all want to be loved. We all want to be valued and respected. We all want to be able to help others. We want peace, right? We want wealth and abundance and all these great things. We want to be in shape, right? We want to be healthy. We want to feel good. We want joy. We all want the same things, right? Good taste in food, whatever the case is. We all want to get laid, right? Preferably by somebody you have really strong feelings for. We all want the same things. But there's all these things that split us, right? And I posted this thing on Instagram. It's just 2 words. It wasn't even a picture. It was just 2 words. Imagine compassion. I'm coming to you in compassion, talking to you, right? Out of love, just trying to bridge the gap. Yo, people, let's come together. Let's come together and unite together under compassion. Let's just imagine compassion right quick. We all know something like animal agriculture doesn't come from a place of compassion. Let's be real, right? We're not enslaving these animals and breeding them and keeping them in these conditions out of compassion. Let's be real, right? Even if you're a dairy farmer, you can love cows, but you wouldn't want to trade places with them, right? Because you know what you're doing to them is not compassionate, right? You're not killing someone or some other living being out of compassion. Maybe you're doing out of self-interest, right? But not everything done out of self-interest is done out of love. You're not catching a fox in a trap and skinning it alive and all of this type of stuff out of compassion, right? There's no compassion in these things. And the belief that, well, you kill it, but you make it quick. Well, you wouldn't want me to kill you and make it quick, no matter how well I treated you. I can bring you free food. I can let you stay in my home. I can do all your laundry and feed you and absolutely pamper you, right? But then, well, time for you to go. But I'll make it quick. You'd be like, hell no. I mean, thank you for treating me nice, but no, I don't want to be killed. I want to live, right? All living beings want to live. Sentience is one of those things. It's more than just a biological process, right? You wouldn't want anybody trying to knock your sentience down a peg. Like, well, you're a sentient being, but so what? It's just a biological process, like anything else. What's the difference between killing you and chopping down a tree? You'd look at that person like they lost their mind. What are you, crazy? I'm a living being with feelings, ambitions, desires, right? It's the same thing for any other living being, right? And so, imagine compassion. What happens when your diet comes strictly out of compassion, right? You lose weight, you build muscle, you're not sick, you're not obese, right? We have an obesity epidemic. That obesity epidemic isn't a result of compassion. You're not eating out of compassion, right? You're not eating meat out of compassion, dairy, eggs, all that type of stuff. You're not doing that out of compassion. Right? So look, compassion. When we're arguing and we're butting heads, right? Oh, these aggressive vegans, and then vegans are like, oh, these freaking morally bankrupt meat eaters, and that's not a conversation, right? With compassion. We got to respect each other, folks. We're not all gonna agree on all things unless we come together through a position of compassion, right? Like I said, whether you believe morality is subjective or objective, really, to a certain degree, is irrelevant, right? Purposefully causing unnecessary death and suffering to get something for your own pleasure is immoral. So far, every single person I've talked to has agreed with me on that point. Okay? So as long as you agree with me on that point, then pretty much we're all vegan at heart. We all believe in peace. We all believe in respecting life. We all really hold the same beliefs. So even though you're still eating meat and eggs, really you have the same values as a person who is vegan. Because we all want the same things. We know it's wrong, right? To unnecessarily cause someone death and suffering just to get something that brings us a little pleasure is immoral, right? We can all agree on that. Maybe you could look at me and say, well, you know what? You're not going to change my eating habits. I'm going to eat whatever I want. I mean, fine. I'm not trying to control you. I'm not trying to force my beliefs on you, right? There's a price to pay. And it's not for me to carry out the consequences. It's on you. But, like I said, come together in compassion and watch things change. Imagine compassion. more love, more life.